All right, YouTube, it's Clear Vision Wednesday time. I am your host, Claudia Mühlenweg, the founder of the Natural Clear Vision Institute. And every Wednesday, we will talk about all things related to vision, to eyesight, overall health, eye health, all these topics that are important when you want to see well as you get older. And before we get into our topic today with my special guest, make sure you subscribe, click the little bell icon so that you're not going to miss any episodes moving forward. All right, well, my guest, but before I bring her on stage, I want to say that her work really changed my life and my belief system. We're going to talk about sugar, we're going to talk about carbs, and why it's so hard and why it's so easy to get hooked and so hard to get out of this mode. And we know sugar related issues are a leading cause of blindness. Diabetes is the leading cause of blindness. So, welcome, Tricia Nelson. Let me bring you on stage.
Hi, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm so glad you're here because your book, Heal Your Hunger, was definitely like a huge aha for me because I was like, I think the topic was emotional eating. I'm like, I'm not an emotional eater. I'm like, and then I'm like, I looked at your book and your checklist, and I'm like, check, 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 check. In my family, my grandparents had a bakery, so I grew up literally every day eating like apple pie. Like in Germany, we have Kaffee und Kuchen, so every afternoon we would eat pie and carbs and sugar. So, well, we have your whole bio and the link to everything. You're the expert in this topic. So why is it your mission to get people out of this sugar and carb obsession or addiction?
Sugar and carb hell, you mean?
Yeah.
Um, Heaven and hell, right? We love it and then it doesn't love us back. So, thanks for having me. This is really exciting. Welcome to the Clear Vision community. I started out early on in my life as a sugar addict. I loved sugar. I love sugar. I love carbs. And I had no real consciousness of there being more to it than that. I just loved it. I love to eat, I love to cook, I love to serve food to other people, go out to dinner with my family. It was just a big deal for me, which would have been perfectly fine, except that I gained weight easily. And so by age 21, I was 50 pounds overweight. That was not okay with me. I felt terrible. My legs chafed together in the summertime on the beach. And I was embarrassed about my weight. I was bigger than my friends. I didn't fit into my clothes, and I always had like 5 different sizes of pants in my closet because I was a dieter, but I would never keep the weight off. So I would go like this. I would be the yo-yo dieter. And so I always had all these different sizes of pants because I never knew what size I would be. I was always holding out for the skinny clothes, right, that were in my closet in the back, but that rarely happened. And if I did fit into those clothes, it was for seconds, and then I'd gain the weight back on. So it wasn't until I hit a dead end with dieting and felt very frustrated, and I made a decision. I'm not dieting anymore. Like it's almost like the more I diet, the bigger I get. So what happened was I learned about emotional eating and realized that I was emotionally drawn to sugar. Like I wasn't just physically addicted to sugar, which I wasn't really aware of that either. I just knew I loved sugar. But man, once I started to eat, Claudia, I would binge. I would go all out. I'd eat the whole bag. I'd eat the carton ice cream. I'd eat 3 bowls of cereal, not one bowl of cereal. So it was a constant thing for me. And so I was really frustrated with being 50 pounds overweight, with never reaching goal weight, with feeling crappy. I mean, I'd have pretty big binges, and it was always late at night, so nobody saw what I was doing. And so I just was very demoralized by my behavior. And definitely, when I felt the need to eat, it was on sugar and carbs, and they are highly addictive. And carbs, like bread or pasta, cereal, these things, even though they aren't sugar directly, carbs metabolize as sugar in our body, which is why bread can be so addictive as well, processed carbs. So that's how it went for me. And once I learned that there was an emotional connection as well, I started to really heal. I had a coach who showed me that, not only was sugar a problem and that I had to address that, but I wasn't going to be able to just stop, right? If sugar and carbs, and I call them ooey gooey chewy foods. Okay, so
Going through. I love that.
those are the ones I liked, and so I was emotionally connected to them as well, meaning when I was sad, when I was frustrated, when I was stressed, when I was tired, when I was happy, they were my go-to. They're like my best friend, my best companion, my lover, the whole, gamut of emotions were covered, and fulfilled, it seemed like, with food. And so it became a real habit for me where I just would go to the refrigerator. Sometimes of an evening, I would check the refrigerator like 3 or 4 or 5 times. I'd stare in the refrigerator and I'd be like, what can I eat? Like and what I was really asking, what will satisfy this craving? Like what will give me a sense of, and no matter how much I ate, I never really got that, or I got it for like a couple minutes, right? And so that really drives home the point, which I came to discover, which was my hunger wasn't really for food. Like it was a deeper hunger. But the bottom line is, because I was an emotional eater, and I really honestly, I was addicted to food. And how if you're an addict or just an emotional eater is really qualified by two things. One is the level of control you have, and also the number of consequences you had from it. And so when I say I was addicted, I mean, you have to eat. You can't not eat,
Hmm.
which is why this is trickier than other addictive habits, because you can't go cold turkey without it. You still have to eat. So you have to take your addiction out of the refrigerator. I call it like taking a tiger out of the cage, petting the nice kitty, and then trying to get it back in the cage without getting your ass torn off. So that's not so easy to do, which is why this is even harder than most addictive habits. And, I find that those who have an overeating habit tend to be super harsh on themselves. We tend to really beat ourselves up and say, oh, aren't I terrible? Like it's just a cookie and I can't even control myself. No, it's a cookie, first of all, with an addictive substance like sugar, which has been proven to be more addictive than heroin. Okay, so you're dealing with a highly addictive substance, but also you're dealing with something that everybody's serving. Everybody's telling you it's okay. It comes in nice, pretty packages, and you can't get away from it. Plus, they're pushing it. Like, come on, have a piece. So it's tough. It's tough. And my experience is, yeah, you got to get aware that it's not some little thing. Like it really takes some addressing and some support, a lot of support, and really a system in order to heal. So that's what happened for me, is I was able to heal. And then what I did, Claudia, because I'm no longer 50 pounds overweight. I'm no longer addicted to sugar. I don't even crave it. I have put what happened for me, what I did to heal, into a step-by-step system. And that's what I do and teach my clients, is how to heal from emotional eating, addictive eating, sugar addiction, and really heal from the inside out, where you just feel peaceful around food. And trauma is a big part of it as well. And we can get into that as well.
Well, thank you so much. And you're absolutely right. It's interesting. I was just thinking as you were talking about my youth, because again, we would have pie every day in Germany, like bread. We have so many kinds of bread, all the snacks that you buy on it's all sandwiches. It's always bread related, right? But I was thinking about, like, I never had really weight issues, a little bit, but smoking was a bigger thing for me, which is a really bad addiction. And then alcohol. I mean, not that I was addicted, but it's also very normalized, right? In Germany, 16, you drink beer and wine. And it's almost like what you just said, like everybody serves. It's almost like when you don't drink, like, what's wrong with you? Do you have a problem? So then you have to defend yourself. And I remember when I moved here, eventually I gave up smoking, but I did used to smoke cigarettes. And I think for me, the bigger thing that I wanted to quit was really that I hated not having control and having something else, like manipulate me into doing things I really didn't want to do, like smoke a cigarette at 8 a.m. in the morning. So yeah, you're absolutely right. I think eating is so challenging because we have to eat. So we can't just say we don't want to eat. So like let's break it down a little bit. You talked about how carbs are like breaking down into sugar in the body. So when I think about myself right now, I'm definitely not addicted to sugar anymore because I haven't eaten any sugar. But I do like when it comes to like those yummy crackers or, I don't really eat bread because no offense, America, but your bread is not, I don't love the bread here anyway. So, but when it comes to like crackers, right, there's so many and they have salt in them and they're so delicious. So I, have to be aware, like when Costco is always one of those places where you buy those big bags and before you know it. So let's talk a little bit about the difference and understanding that it's not really just your willpower, because I think what you talked about is so relatable, right? You lose that weight, you gain it back, you feel like, and you're saying you're hard on yourself, can definitely relate to that, like feeling really hard on myself. And I gained a lot of weight when I went into like my mid 40s into perimenopause. That's when all of a sudden I gained those 50 pounds, right? Like that happened to me when I was younger, not so much, a little bit, but later on, like, and then when I'm like, and then you're thinking, oh, but I have more cushion, so I look less wrinkly. But let's break it down because at the end of the day, you're right. We have brain fog, we're tired. I didn't have any energy, so things don't fit. You look at photos and you're like, I don't want to be in the picture. There's so many like your confidence. Let's talk a little bit about all these like emotions and how, that shows up when you are an emotional eater.
Yeah, and I love, Claudia, that you, when you read my book, were like, I'm totally an emotional eater because you're thin, you're beautiful, you're fit, you're strong, and I think there's a myth that you have to be overweight to be an emotional eater, and you don't. You don't. You just have to have that kind of that nervous habit of eating to feel better, and that's really the most simple explanation for emotional eating. You eat to feel better. Period. You just
Mhm.
eat to feel better when there are better ways to feel better, especially when it backfires and you end up feeling worse. So I love your honesty and your vulnerability and that you're like, yeah, that's me. And yet you're in a thin body and you're, pretty in control of your life. And so it's not somebody who's necessarily out of control in other ways. In fact, that's one of the most frustrating things is you can be on top of your game in business, in your job, in your civic life, in your family life, and yet there's this dark secret, like this one thing you can't control, and it brings a lot of shame, right? Like how come I can, pretty much be in control in other ways, but this gets the best of me and I feel out of control. Late at night, I'm sneaking down to the kitchen. I don't want anybody to know what I'm doing. And so there's a lot of shame that comes with it. And so, regardless what your weight is. So there's a lot of layers to this thing. Um, Emotionally, I mean, if some people are like, I'm not an emotional eater, like that's just stupid. Like that's how I felt when I'm like, I just like food. I'm not an emotional eater,
Right, that's what I thought too. Yeah.
And so what I would say is think of your absolute favorite food. Like I'm just going to challenge everybody to just think of the thing you love the most. And if you had no consequences, the thing you would eat all day long, like, or you wish you could eat all day long, think of that food. Okay,
I'm
you got
typing
that?
in as well.
And now imagine you can never eat that food again. What comes up for you when I say that? Like off the table, you never get to have it again. What comes up? And usually people are like, "Oh my God," like panic, fear, sadness, anger, right? And so I say that just as a simple example of, you know, the ties we have with food are more emotional than we realize. It's like that favorite food is our security. That favorite food is, it's the thing that will always be there for us or the thing that will make us happy if nothing else does. Like there's definitely emotional connections with food. And some people watching this may be very clear they have an emotional connection with food. It's their go-to. I want to say also, this has a lot to do with stress as well. And in my book, I talk about the anatomy of the emotional eater, which are 24 personality traits of an emotional eater. There are more, but these are the top 24. And I identified this in my research because I found that this has a lot more to do with our personality than with the actual food itself. And what I mean by that is we have traits. People who get out of control with food or feel out of control with food, who love food, who might go overboard with food now and then, we have a common personality profile, if you will. And these are the things that really cause our emotional eating, not the foods. Yes, we might be addicted to sugar. Yes, we get into trouble with ooey gooey chewy foods or bread or whatever. But more than that, there are traits like beating ourselves up easily. That's actually a trait of an emotional eater, is we're super hard on ourselves. Like when we make a mistake, we can go to town being mean girl to ourselves, beating ourselves up. Why did you do that? I can't believe you did that. They're never going to forgive you, blah, blah, blah. Like we're so mean to ourselves. We can't let it go. We can't like throw it off easily. So that's a trait of an emotional eater. Another trait of an emotional eater is people pleasing.
Mm. Oh my God. Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And it's like, we take the cake on this. Pardon the pun, but we take the cake on this. It's like we are always trying to please other people. We're hard on ourselves, and then we're always trying to have people validate us, right? Give us a sense of like worth. Right, we're running ourselves ragged doing it. So we're not only overeaters, but we're overdoers.
Mm-hmm.
Always overdoing. We stuff our schedule with things to do, very little time for self-care. And so these are some of the traits that drive us to eat, even though we're thinking they have nothing to do with food. We're thinking, oh, food, diet, what's the right diet for us? It really doesn't matter. I mean, sure, sugar's addictive. You're better off if you're not eating it. But beyond that, it's our traits, it's the perfectionism, thinking we have to do everything perfectly, setting an impossible bar for ourselves. Having a racing mind is another trait. We not only overeat, we overthink. Not only do we overthink, we overfeel. We feel guilty about everything. So there are traits of the personality of the emotional eater that actually drive us to eat. And I'll give you an example of how it's related. When you're a people pleaser and you want people to be so happy with your performance and all that you're saying yes to and say that you can do, it comes at a high price because we run ourselves ragged trying to get those atta girls, right? And so we're exhausted. But not only that, we're also a little pissed off because nobody's ever as pleased as we imagined they would be when we said, I'll take the extra project. I'll take on, running the committee, or I'll bring the brownies for the soccer team. We never get the kudos or the atta girls we're expecting. So we're not only exhausted and, overtired, but we're also resentful. And that's the perfect storm for the I deserve it binge. Like, screw them. They're not appreciating me. I'm going to appreciate myself with my perfect, food that I'm going to go home and sit and watch TV and eat. So that's an example of how people pleasing, which ostensibly has nothing to do with food, drives us to eat, because food is what we console ourselves with. Food is what we reward ourselves with, when we're in this habit, in this cycle of using food for emotional reasons. So that's why I often refer to this as a living problem instead of an eating problem.
Wow, I was like, wow, wow, wow. And I see in the chat also, people saying cake and chocolate, feeling sad if I can't eat that again. I think we call it comfort food for a reason. So I think I can definitely relate to this idea of people pleasing, and I think I also from my mother, right? My mother was definitely that kind of character who always tried to please everybody. And then we kind of picked that up. So I think I would love for you in the YouTube to comment if any of those things sound like that's you. So I would then say, so saying yes is also like we have to learn how to say no more often without feeling now nobody's going to love us, nobody is going to like us, right? So, which comes back to the confidence,
Yeah, the confidence and the boundaries. We're
Yeah.
good as people pleasers we're not good with saying no. Like, no, I can't do that. I have too much on my plate, which is not a lie. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but the truth is that we have to be able to say no from time to time. We have to be able to, say, look, my plate is full. I've got a lot going on. The problem is when we're hard on ourselves and we take it as a reflection on our worth, right? Like we're like we feel guilty for saying no. No, you have to say no. You have to learn the word no if you're ever going to change your eating habits, because you can't be all things to all people. It's impossible, and you really need other people to pick up the slack. Otherwise, you're constantly in conflict with people that you love. You love them, but you kind of hate them too, and then you feel guilty because you're not feeling as good about things as you want to, or about them as you want to. So there's a lot of changes that need to be made that have nothing to do with food. And I will say regarding trauma, because we want to make sure to talk about the connection there. My experience is these traits that I'm talking about, the anatomy of the emotional eating traits, these traits originated usually from an environment in which there was trauma. So
Hmm.
they do stem back to our childhood. Let's say you grew up in an alcoholic home, okay, which is pretty common for emotional eaters. An alcohol, a home where there was addiction, maybe there was rage or abuse of some kind. When you grow up in a dysfunctional situation, you learn coping tools like eating, of course, but also people pleasing. If you have a raging alcoholic parent, you better become a people pleaser pretty damn fast. You better be able to jump to take care of things, clean the kitchen, get the siblings in order or whatever, so as to not, sort of irritate or, poke the bear, if you will. And so the point is, when we grow up with some dysfunction, oftentimes we develop these traits of not saying how we really feel, lest we get our ass kicked, right? And so it's like these are traits that initially might have even saved our lives. They might have saved our lives. Like if we hadn't developed them, we would have been in big trouble, which food saved our lives as well, right? If we were eating sugar as kids because we were in emotional pain and food made us feel better, sugar, that pastry was all we had to look forward to, food saved our lives as well. It's just that it becomes a habit. People pleasing becomes a habit. Trying to get validation becomes a habit. And in our adult lives, those habits, which were once survival skills, they turn on us and they become, detriments, right? Detriments, if not major liabilities that could literally kill us. And so this is where we have to take a look at the fact that, we don't blame ourselves for being people pleasers. It was a survival skill. It's just that it's outworn its welcome. Like we need to start making changes. We need to start using boundaries when we, are looking at our schedule and what we can and cannot do. So we change the way we live such that we can have a different relationship with food.
It's so interesting. So many things that you touched on are also the correlation to vision problems, right? Trauma and childhood, adverse childhood events, stress is oftentimes when blurry vision comes up because we don't feel safe. And one of the themes that I see with my clients is also that idea it's not safe to see. So there's definitely a fear, and like you said, with eating, it's like a way to kind of comfort ourselves. Like it was a survival strategy for your nervous system to blur things out because you were just so overwhelmed. Then you
Mhm.
get the glasses, and now you're kind of forced into that clarity, which is another way of compensating, right? So you have to compensate in other ways. So it's so interesting to me how many connections I see in that same kind of, yeah, causation. And I think it's so important what you said, that we don't beat ourselves up even further by being people pleaser, but having little things that we can do in turning those bad habits, right? That we like, same with vision habits. I talk about vision habits all the time, like how we can turn them around and make them healthy habits so that we can then stop the eating. So instead of starting with Ozempics or diet, whatever, like really looking at that piece. And we're not saying, like, I think you're on the same page. We wouldn't say that any of these things are bad. But at the same time, if we don't address the underlying reason, like the emotional, the trauma, right, we will only have limited success. So it's
Absolutely. That's so true, Claudia. And the thing is, it's not bad to want to please people. Like, that's a good thing. And my
right.
experience, I mean, I hang out with emotional eaters all day long. That's what I do in Heal Your Hunger. It's like I'm hanging out with these people who have big hearts, big hearts, because we're feelers, right? We
Mhm.
feel deeply. That's one of the traits of the emotional eater, the food addict, is we feel deeply. And again, it starts out as a survival skill, is to, I mean, not a survival skill as much as just how it is. And then we start to cover up with food. So it's not bad to have a big heart and feel deeply. It's just we have to learn how to negotiate that and navigate, because we don't want to become cold, hard people, right? Um, as we let go of the food and the excess food, we have to learn how to deal with our sensitivity and our big heartedness. And that's where, learning self-care is so important. Learning to communicate effectively, our feelings instead of burying them is so important. So there's really two sides to all of these traits. They're not bad traits. We're not looking to get rid of them. We're looking to work with them so that we can enhance the upside of them, and diminish the downside of them.
Well, that is so, that's so important that we realize we are like big-hearted people. We have big feelings, right? The things that we were also saying, don't be so emotional. I heard that all the time when I was a kid. So I was bullied not because of my weight, but because I wore glasses, but it was yet the same thing. I didn't fit in. And so like, don't be so emotional. And I think as girls, we hear that even more.
Yeah.
Um, so tell us a little bit you have an event coming up. First of all, your book is amazing. You have a TED Talk, so Heal Your Hunger. That book was really like that list that you said, the traits, I was like, oh my God. Because now all it makes sense, right? It all makes sense. Like, why am I so addicted to these sugary and carb heavy and I would go like sweet, salty, sweet, salty. I would literally make like, you eat enough Nutella out of the big jar. And then, now I need it back then the salami, like on the sandwich. And then you go back to the sweet stuff. I saw marzipan in the chat. Marzipan, oh my God, one of my favorites in Germany. It's an almond paste. It's so good. So tell everybody about your event that you have coming up because I really want everybody to have a chance to tell us about this summit or that immersion that you're having coming up.
You bet. I am teaming up with the one and only Dr. Aimie Apigian, who is the author of the upcoming best-selling book called Biology of Trauma. So she and I are teaming up because her message is so powerful about trauma and how you can heal from trauma and how you can heal yourself, and soothe yourself in effective, healthy ways instead of overeating, emotionally eating. So she and I have teamed up for an event called the Biology of Emotional Eating. And this is a 3-day event where we are sharing powerful content both about trauma and how to understand trauma in your body. That's Dr. Aimie's expertise. I know she's a friend of yours as well, Claudia. And then I'm going to be sharing my expertise around emotional eating. So she's going to be describing kind of the biology of emotional eating and how, we come to crave sugar, how we come to overeat and what that's about, like the biological reasons. And I'm sharing the emotional reasons. And then we're coming together as well with a solution for people. It's a free event. It's powerful. I'm so excited about what we're bringing to people. It's never been done before. The biology of emotional eating. This is a new topic, and we're covering it in a really impactful way. So we'd love to have people attend this. It's a free event. It's happening next week. Sign up, jump in the Facebook group. Let's connect around our common interest of healing our relationship with food and healing our biology. That's basically sabotaging us, working against us so that we can heal and feel good about our bodies, improve our health, feel good about our relationship with food.
I love that. And I love that you're doing it for free so that people can really, there's not no money barrier to like attending this event. So I love that you're doing this for free. I think it's so important. Once I understood all this, I could make way better choices, right? And understand, and even to this day, I'm always vulnerable. Like, I mean, there's still moments when, life goes to hell, right? And it's like, so I'm like, I'm not saying this never ever happens to me again, but I understand completely why I'm doing it. And I can also immediately recognize and give myself some love for all the hard work that we're doing. So I think this is definitely a trait that many of us have. And especially in Germany, like it's almost like if you're not doing something, you're not productive. You're like literally trained to always do stuff, right? Like just this weekend, I was laying on the couch reading a book in one day. I was like, I haven't had done that since I was a kid, yeah. But like, kind of doing those little events. So join that event. That coincides with my free training as well. But we really want you just like, I think for you, it's as important as for me to have as many people as possible experience this. And really quick, when people register, do they get recordings? How does it work? Tell us a little bit about how this works.
So it's a really interesting model that's that Dr. Aimie does often. It's sort of like a cross between a masterclass series and a summit. So what you get each day is new content that's available for 24 hours, and we
Mhm.
are curating this content to cover the most important trainings around the biology of emotional eating. So you can access that content any time of the day, each of the days. And there is a VIP upgrade, which is only $20. And that's, you buy her book, Dr. Amy's new book, and then you get these VIP bonuses, which is a free live training on Saturday. You don't have to do that, but I highly recommend buying her book. It's on sale right now. You do it through when you sign up, because then you'll get the VIP, it'll unlock the VIP bonuses for
Okay,
you.
perfect. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's gonna be an amazing book. She worked with Gabor Mate and lots of the luminaries in this space. So,
yeah.
well, I don't see any more questions on YouTube. So this was very interesting. And I think, connecting the dots, stopping to beat yourself up and understand why you're eating these things that are so bad for your eyes. We don't want to wait till it's so bad. So even I think it's important to highlight also, even if you're not like really overweight, you're like the skinny emotional eater, right? Like I used to be, where it's like you definitely don't look like you have an eating problem or a food problem. So I think, do you want to, like, I would love to hear just a little bit more about that. Like, a couple more things, like, from your checklist, maybe, how do you
Yeah,
know
well,
that you're an emotional eater, even if you don't like struggle with huge, like, obesity, for instance?
Well, and that's a good point. Sometimes it's harder when people don't have a weight problem, because other people will say, "Oh, what do you like? What do you
I
squawk
know,
about?"
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like who cares? Like eat all you want. No, it's miserable to stuff yourself with food. Like it's a dark experience, especially when you're hiding it and you feel ashamed about it. So it really doesn't matter what your weight is. I mean, obviously nobody wants to be overweight, and that's its own form of misery. But if no one will pay attention when you feel desperate and you want help because you look normal, right? That's a problem too. And I totally understand. I mean, I've been overweight and I've been thin. I wasn't cured of emotional eating. So I still had the problem. Like you said, you can slide back. And I did a couple times at a normal weight. So we have a relationship with food that we will always have day by day, our entire lives. It's a relationship. And so figuring this out is really important, because you can't get away from it. You have to eat. And if you have an overeating tendency, if you are obsessed with food and your weight, you can be thin and still be super unhappy with your body. It's called body dysmorphia, where you're harsh with yourself, where you won't allow yourself to eat, and because you just feel like you're not perfect enough. There's a lot of psychology and emotional stuff underlying our relationship with food that must be figured out. Like, in order to live in joy, you got to put a spotlight on this stuff, because, and I don't mean by dieting and restricting, I mean in a self-caring, loving way, we need to spend some time addressing our relationship with food, because it's a relationship we will always have until they pat us on the head in the dirt, you know? So really important to spend some time doing this. It's worth the investment of time to start exploring what's driving our eating patterns. And that's what I do. That's what Dr. Amy's going to do in our event, you know, to kick it off. So I hope you do join the event, but it's an intense thing, you know, and it's true with our relationship with our bodies is also one you can't get away from. Like you got to put your jeans on every day, right? You got to fit into your clothes. And so that's a relationship with as well. And if you've been on the dieting roller coaster ride, that's a tortured relationship too, you know, like where you don't like your body. I mean, I used to have a roll on my tummy. I still do. I anatomically can't get rid of it no matter what my weight is. Roll on my tummy. I would scrunch up in my hands and imagine cutting it off. This roll of
I can
fat,
relate to that too. I used to think that same
right?
thing.
I'm like, well, it's just fat. And, you know, when you have a steak and there's fat on the side of the steak, you can cut the fat off. Like maybe, you know, how crazy is that? You know, so that's something we have to address. Like, what is our relationship with our bodies? You know, how are our food choices impacting our relationship with our bodies and how we feel about our bodies? This is time well spent, is, you know, getting the right kind of guidance for this, you know, guidance that isn't harsh, that isn't black and white like diet culture, that's really about healing. And the cool thing is, like in my healing journey, when I've, you know, been blessed to heal the underlying causes, when you heal at a deeper level, then everything in your life gets better.
I
Like
know, that's so
not
true.
just food, right? Not just food, not just vision. Everything gets better.
Yeah, last question I have is really like what for somebody who has, let's say, because I get this question on the vision stuff, so I was just thinking, what if somebody has like a deeper thing like bulimia, or what if somebody had gastric bypass surgery, or what if somebody is taking Ozempic? Does that still make sense to attend your event? Like,
Absolutely. You know, whether somebody's on Ozempic or not, you know, my experience is if you go on Ozempic, at some point you're gonna have to go off of Ozempic. So you're either that or you're gonna be on it forever. Point is, you still need support. You still need to improve and heal your relationship with food and with weight, right? And so, I mean, my experience is as the deeper we go emotionally, the more successful we are, not only, you know, in life, but also with our weight. And it's really important that we find that peaceful place. You know, I mean, honestly, I didn't hit bottom in my relationship with food until I lost a bunch of weight because I was so convinced. I was, you know, as a fat person, I was so convinced if I lost weight, I would be happy.
mm-hmm.
It's an easy illusion to fall into. I lost weight. Lo and behold, I was not happy. Why? Because everything I had buried with food came back up and I had no tools to deal with them. So when people lose weight on Ozempic, you know, it's really important to know that whatever's being uncovered when that weight is gone still needs to be addressed. Like we still need to learn and living in a thin body is a thing too. Like because you still have fat, I call it fat head. You still think you're fat.
I've had, yeah.
Like you can't like you look in the mirror and you're like, who's that? Because you're not used to it. So it's a journey. It's a journey. It's a relationship. My experience is everybody can benefit from learning more about, you know, how we relate to food, you know, what emotional eating is, how we heal from emotional eating. Everybody emotionally eats. You know, my experience is a spectrum. You know, when we're all on the spectrum, it's just your habits might be more addictive than another person's habits. But my experience is everybody can up level their relationship with food so they can be healthier. And so you can have clear vision. You know, if you're making choices that don't support your vision and don't support good health, there's room to grow there. There's room to improve.
I thank you so much. This is so important that we actually address, even though it's overused word, the root cause, because otherwise it's just not never going to get better. And that same thing goes for vision. And also what I found as I'm in my 60s now, like things like, you know, smoking or drinking too much or all those things or eating too much sugar, like you still look good when you're in your 20s and 30s, right? But now you get to the point where like you pay the price, on this, also on the level where you look in the mirror in terms of like, even if you're skinny, you just don't look vibrant, your eyes don't look clear. You can tell, right? And then it's even worse because now people can tell that you're not really healthy, and then you beat yourself up even more. So I think addressing this from the ground up is so important. So thank you so much, Tricia. This was incredibly interesting. And I think for all of you listening here, please make sure you register for the event. You follow Tricia. Where are you? You're on Instagram, Facebook, all those places, right?
Yep. Tricia Nelson _ is my Instagram, and my company is Heal Your Hunger. So healyourhunger.com is where you can find my TEDx talk and my book and all that.
Great. Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on
Thank
and
you.
sharing all this. And we're going to have a little private chat in the Clear Vision Club now. So thank you, YouTube, and goodbye. And make sure you subscribe and follow Tricia and follow this channel so that you get access to more cool speakers and sessions like Tricia. So, all right, you guys, let me see, live stream.
Thanks for having me.